All right. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you to all who's taken the time out of your day to tune in to this webinar. I'm excited to share what I have prepared. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. My name is Michelle Gomez, and I am a content coordinator at BCDC Ideas. As you know, BCDC hosts the Create Good conference. But outside of hosting this awesome event for nonprofit communicators, we are a communications agency that works exclusively for nonprofits in terms of all types of communications work. And so in my role, I get to work with a lot of different clients on different types of projects, some of which include visual storytelling. Now, for me, visual storytelling is just one of those things that really gets my heart going. It gets me really pumped up. And I just also think it's a really powerful tool that helps nonprofits move the needle for their cause. And with that being said, how does it do that? Why is visual storytelling important for nonprofits? And so visual storytelling has the power to push a nonprofit's mission forward. It can do that by putting a face to a nonprofit's mission or issue. And that's because video is just one of those forms of mediums that can really attract attention to your organization. It's a really great way to just inform people in the shortest amount of time and tell people, this is what you do. And so people will most likely be interested in watching a video than actually reading a block of text. And another way that it does that is by helping you tell compelling stories. So if you have testimonials or stories that show your nonprofit's impact, or you're able to share that with your community, with those that you help, and be able to garner that support because you'll be able to connect with your audience on a more deeper level. And share what your organization is doing and how it's impacting the community that you work with. And another way that it's powerful is that it's just a really good way to engage with donors. You can utilize videos to help maximize your fundraising efforts. You can use videos to show your donors what you're doing, how their investment into your organization is impacting, again, your community. And then lastly, it's also just a really great way to move people to action. So the stories that you tell can convey certain feelings of happiness, of hope, frustration, anger, and if you have a strong story and a strong to call to action at the end, you can move people to do what you want them to do. And that could be calling their legislator, or visiting your website, or signing up for this event or for that. So it's just a really good way to help move people to action and get the needle moving. And so now I have a quick poll for you all. And this is where I like to ask you all, how often do you use video as part of your communication strategy? So I'm going to go ahead and share that poll with you all. Please take a second to fill it out. All right, so we're going to go ahead and close that and see the results. Okay, so it looks here that we have a variety of responses in terms of how people incorporate video into their communication strategy. And I think, regardless of whether you do it often or not, there is one thing I do want to encourage, and that is the embracing of video in your nonprofit. With the way that social trends are moving, it's just becoming clear that video content is now one of the most popular forms of content that there is on the internet. According to WordStream's research back in 2018, they found that internet video traffic would account for more than 80% of all consumer traffic by this year alone. And so I think we can see that now, especially in the situation that we're living in. People are resorting to creating more video content and keeping their audiences engaged with the work that they're doing and what's taking place in their organization. And so now we get to the fun stuff, producing your nonprofit story. So if you're interested in using incorporating video more into your communication strategy, or finding other ways of how to create content if it's already something you do, there are different methods to go about capturing those visuals to put the story together that you want to tell. And so I simplified it to 3 different ways that I've done it in the past. And the most straightforward method that I want to share here is filming the content yourself. If you have the tools, if you have the resources, this is the most common way of getting the story that you want. This method usually requires storyboarding, selecting your subjects for interview, setting up the video production days, and then finally doing post-production. However, this can be a pretty lengthy process that requires a lot of moving parts, such as equipment, time commitment, and possibly added expenses. And because of that, sometimes organizations resort to hiring a third party to help get this done. But if your organization doesn't have that capability, or if you do, that's great. But if that's just something that you don't always have the capability of filming the story yourself, there is another way of producing stories, and that is through repurposing your existing footage. So if you've had footage that you've captured over the years that's been used, or it's just sitting there because it didn't see a project to completion, you can definitely utilize that. What usually this process requires is just really knowing your content, knowing what you have, so you know what type of story to tell, and seeing what else you need to get in order to help fill in the gaps. And the last method that I have here is using your available resources. So it may be the case that you need to create something on the fly, or you may not have the content that you want and or need, but you do want to start utilizing video into your communication strategy. Your organization may be in the place where you can't necessarily go out and film stuff, but as I mentioned, but you do want to incorporate it into your work. You can use online platforms to help you get video creation going. And so I'm going to share a couple of those later on in this presentation, but I just included this method because it's just always nice to remind people that you don't necessarily have to go out and film footage to create a video. You can utilize what you have, for example, images or on-screen text, and be able to create a video out of that. And so now we get to post-production, where we cut the story and put it together. And so when you have the method that you're going to use in terms of capturing the visuals to put your story together, you have to go through post-production. And this is where the process in terms of video production that people sometimes often get most overwhelmed with, mainly just because of the process of getting started. And one way that's helped me get through this process is by narrowing it down and focusing on specific steps, with the first step being to know your goals. Usually this is established before you begin gathering your content, but it's also important to just really know them once you sit down to edit, because knowing your goals is going to help you know what to look for when you're reviewing your content and how you want to put your story together. And so whether the purpose of your video is to inform or to entertain, knowing your goals just helps sets you up for knowing your goals of your video. And so this leads me into my next step. Analyze and log your content. Once your footage is imported into your editing software or platform, you want to take a look at what you have. What's usable, what sounds good, what sounds clear, what type of B-roll has the best angles, what are some of the scenes with the best lighting, what are the best sound bites to get. And once you've done that, go ahead and log your content, because logging your content is going to help you stay organized and help you locate the important sound bites much more quickly and much more efficiently. And the next step is that I have here is editing the story together. And so this is when you start selecting the best sequences, the best sound bites, the best visuals, and start putting your story together. And as you're doing this, as you're editing the story together, it's always important to remember that it's a form of storytelling, that you want to still follow the basic storyline structure of what it's like to tell your story. And so you want to answer the questions of who, what, where, when, and why. And some of these can be more direct, others can be more implied, but it's important to keep that in mind when you're editing your story together, so you can help create the best piece possible. And so the last step that I have here is to review. So like I mentioned, you want to review all your content, review your story, review the sequence, because it's just you have to take a look at how the sound bites sound, how the cuts look, are they seamless, if the b-roll is smooth, and are the transitions also smooth, if you have music, does the music fit, or does the audio sound well, does the color look unified throughout. And then once you've taken a look at that, if there's something that needs some fixing or some sound bites that you need to remove, this is where you do it. And so this is just a process that oftentimes requires more than one cycle. So when you're reviewing, you have to go back to, is it fulfilling your goal? Is it doing what you want it to do? If it's not, do you have to go back and look through your content, find out what is it that's missing, and incorporate it into the sequence, and then add it to the story, and then again review. And so you go through this process quite a bit until you have a final product that you're happy with. And so some things to keep in mind while editing. One thing that I like to think about is that every cut you make can make or break a video. So when you're putting your footage together, you want to think, as I mentioned earlier, think about the story, because it's just really important to remember that you're trying to convey a message, and you want that to be clear, you want that to be effective, and you want it to be efficient through your video. And so it's just important to keep that in mind when you're putting it together. And then the next thing is your pace. Looking at the pace of a video is what can help set the tone or the mood or just the overall feeling of your video. So it can help you convey some really strong messages. But you have to take the pace into consideration, because if you're looking to create excitement, some of what could help are having fast cuts, having some upbeat music. But if you're trying to have your audience sit in on an emotional piece, having more sound bites in between and breathing space in between can help you set up that emotional feeling that you want your audience to get. So it's all about pacing and making sure that no matter what it is that the message that you want to convey, that it feels appropriate, and that you're giving your audience enough time to sit in that. And then the last thing that I have here is time. And this is just something that I think it's really important to consider, especially when it comes to engaging your audience, because you don't want to have to draw out your story if it needs to be more than 2 minutes. I know it's important to tell the story as long as it takes, but you also want to make sure that you're keeping your audience engaged, that once they come across your video, that they click on it and that they stay on it. So it's just really important to keep that in mind. And it's also important in terms of the platform, in terms of where you're going to be sharing your video. Some platforms have videos that are longer than 2 to 3 minutes and they perform well. Others need videos that are 30 seconds. So just considering what platforms you're going to be sharing that, time is important to take into account. And so now that we've covered the methods on how you can go about producing different types of videos for your nonprofit and what the editing process can look like, I want to show you some examples of how I've put that into practice. So let's go ahead and take a look at this one example from a client that we worked with called Building Movement Project. So this client is based in New York, and they work on developing research and tools to help nonprofits tackle on social issues. And so the main focus of the project that we had with this client was actually creating a website for them, recreating a website. But part of that project also consisted of creating a video that explained the type of work they do through using testimonials and visuals to show their impact, because this was a video they wanted to incorporate into their website in their About tab, so that once people visited their website and they clicked on that, people could watch the video and learn more about them. What this project required was that we had to have the creative team to go out and capture all that footage. We had to go out and film interviews with the folks from the nonprofit, but also the partners that they've worked with, and also just capture B-roll of their work in action. And so once we were able to do that and capture all the footage, we were able to piece the story together. And so let's go ahead and take a look at the video. So I'm going to put it here in the chat and go ahead and take a few minutes to watch that.
Building Movement Project is unlike any other organization. It's a catalyst, it's an influencer.
The research that Building Movement Project has done gives a critical voice in elevating the types of solutions that are needed to bring about change.
The reason we do that work is to support, but also to push organizations to be more progressive, to be more focused on social change.
To amplify the voice of the people they work with and serve, and then to raise up issues of leadership, especially race and power, and how that influences the way we operate as organizations.
The work of Building Movement Project understands what it means to be in relationship and to be in solidarity with people who are struggling and doing good work to organize on issues on the ground.
It's critical to BMP's impact because unless you're listening to and learning from folks who are closest to the ground, the recommendations, the examples will not be relevant for organizations that we want to impact and that we want to support. So having data, evidence, research to back that up does advance conversations more quickly.
In a way, we're leading from behind because we provide people with information, tools, but really what people are doing is they're changing the way they practice their work based on the evidence that we provide and the belief that people can really make changes, that it doesn't have to come from the top down, it can come from the bottom up.
BMP is able to take a bird's eye view, and when you have that kind of perspective, then you're increasing the chance of innovation into the future.
Building Movement Project is being responsive to what's coming out. They're having conversations in different parts of the country, and they're also thinking about what tools can help organizations build up their capacity to be more inclusive of people.
And at the end of the day, they're centering it all around equity, which is incredibly important. We're having more conversations across multiple sectors about what does it mean to embody equity in the work that we're doing.
It's much harder to change our behavior than to change our language. Changing what you say is a lot easier than changing what you do. And what the Building Movement Project is asking groups to do is to change what they do and what they say.
All right. So I hope you all had a chance to take a look at the video. And so as you can see, we were able to accomplish our goal. We were able to tell the story about who they were, how they do their work, and in that also share testimonials and visuals of their work in action. But when we take a look back at the editing process, one of the biggest challenges that we faced was selecting the sound bites for this video, because there were just so many good ones to choose from. And as a matter of fact, looking back, our first cut was actually over 5 minutes long. And so our end goal for the video was to be 2 to 3 minutes. So we obviously had to cut out some really great content. And this is a challenge that a lot of editors often face, in terms of knowing what to cut out and knowing what to keep. And when this happens, I usually like to keep some things in mind, because sometimes you just can't incorporate everything that you want to. And so when that happens, I think it's just important to keep the sound bites that are the most succinct and effective in helping tell the story. And also, the ones that are the most powerful in being able to do that. And so let's go ahead and take a look at the next example. And this is from a client that we also worked with. They wanted to create a brand video that combined powerful framing statements from those that work in the organization with the heartfelt reactions of its organization's members, because they wanted to inspire others who were not part of the Sacred Fire community to come and attend their events and to check out Sacred Fire. What made this project very unique is the fact that we did not capture any of this footage ourselves. The client had all this footage, and they wanted us to use what they had to be able to create this video. And when they sent us their hard drive with footage, it was over 500 gigabytes worth of content. So it was a lot, and it required some really deep analyzing and logging of content, so we could become familiarized with it and know where to pull the sound bites from. And so once we did that, we were able to put this final video together for them. So let's go ahead and take a look. I'm going to put that here in the chat and take a quick few minutes to watch that as well.
In ancient cultures, fire served as the center of community, where stories were told, community issues were resolved, and people came to refocus, renew, and process the events of their lives. Sacred Fire continues to uphold those time-honored traditions to bring about heart and healing in the modern world.
This social phenomena of speaking and thinking and forming ideas and engaging each other is part of the presence of being around fire. That opens us up to our sense of who we are and our relationship to each other in the world.
When we start to share our emotions like this around the fire, we find a whole new way of connecting, where we find that connection as humans, or connecting into our common humanity.
The path to expanding and enriching our relationships through the connective and transformative power of fire.
To be held in that space by a group of people who are moving together and working together toward the sustainable movement in the world.
The things that get us down, that drag us down, and it's transformed into a sense of remembering that we're bigger than we thought we were, that we're part of something much more vital, much more gracious, much more enlivening, and much more benevolent than we think.
In these times of rapid change, discover what the modern world has lost.
My life has been so enriched by the sharing, the laughter, the shared tears, the shared experiences, that have come from all the people that are attracted to and connected to coming together around fire.
I feel connected, and I love this kind of rituals because we don't do alone. We do with everybody, and this is the beauty of this. I love community.
It's very comfortable, very uplifting.
I just feel it's my family and it's my tribe, and the dancing and the music and the laughing and the community.
Creating community together and doing ceremony with the fire, telling stories, being connected to the earth again, you know, really like we're supposed to be.
Find your community with fire.
All right, so hope you all have had a chance to watch the video. And as you may have noticed when watching it, you may have heard the voiceover. And again, taking a step back at the editing process and what that was like, it was one of the challenges we faced when working on this video was finding content that would help fill the gap for what we wanted to create. While they did have a lot of really great footage to choose from, we didn't really have that one central interview or central visual that we could help build the story around. And so we wanted something to unify the entire video. And while we couldn't go out and film anything additional, we wrote a script to help bring the video together and help us achieve the goal that we had set forth. So this is, again, an example of how you can incorporate existing footage into your communication strategy, be able to create a video and repurpose your content to create something new. And you can you can help fill in the gaps through different ways, and one of them, you know, being through voiceover or through on-screen text, or different ways and that will help you, or other different ways that will help you tell your story, if this is one way that you choose to go. And so the last example I have here is from one of the clients that we work with, from the National HPV Vaccination Roundtable. They recently started a YouTube channel, and what they wanted was for us to create a 30-second trailer for their YouTube channel that would visually visually introduce them to anyone new who visited their channel. So for this project, we used a bit of footage that they had available, and we combined it with images that we found from stock sources and utilized on-screen text to help create something fun and short. So let's go ahead and take a look. Awesome. So, as you saw, this video didn't really need a lot of film footage to put together. Our main subject, per se, was the text on the screen, and that's what kind of helped that's what helped us tell the story, along with some images and footage that helped us visualize what we were referencing. So again, this is referring back to the different types of methods in terms of producing your story. This is just, again, an example of how you can use what's available, using on-screen text, images to be able to create something, if to create a video, if this is a way that you want to start putting out more video content. And so we're going to do another poll, and here I'd like to know, how comfortable do you feel filming video and using editing software? So I'm gonna go ahead and share that poll with you all, and take just a quick second to fill that out. Okay, let's see the results. Okay, well, yeah, it looks like we have here another mix of variety of responses in terms of how people feel. But yeah, I think, regardless again of where you stand, one thing that I like to share is that telling your nonprofit story doesn't require any fancy equipment or software. You can use the resources that work best for you. So that's just really good news, really great, to a really great thing to know, because you can use what works best for you. You can find something that will help you tell your story efficiently, effectively, and something that's whatever you're most comfortable with. You can utilize that to help you tell your story. So I'm going to share here just some equipment and editing software recommendations that can help you do that. And if you look on the equipment list, you'll take a look that the first thing that I have listed is a phone. I have that there because I think it's important to remember that you don't always need a fancy camera to help start putting video content together. You can use your phone, and most of the time nowadays, like, phones are just created to help to work as filming devices. Most recently, I came across an artist who filmed their entire music video just using iPhones 11. So so it's just a really great tool that oftentimes goes underestimated in terms of what it can be used for. But if you want to be able to start putting together content quick and fast and start experimenting with video, you can definitely start with your phone. And they have a lot of resources available too that you can use, such as they have tripods for phone, like little tiny ones that you can use. You can purchase a selfie ring light if you want to get some lighting in there. And yeah, you can use your phone to help start telling stories. But if you also want to kick it up a notch and try your hand at using cameras, DSLR cameras are usually some of the most often used for recording content. I really like them because they're not too big, and you can carry them around like a regular camera. And so yeah, if you find like a good lens and a decent microphone with a tripod, and some lights, you can definitely start creating content without any issues. And usually there isn't that much of a learning curve on those. If you don't want to get too technical, you can just put everything on automatic and start creating content that way. And also have SD cards and hard drives, because I think it's just always important to take care of your footage, to have space, because videos can create large files. So just having that places where you can store all your footage and your videos, it's always important, and sometimes what people often forget. And so also too, looking at editing software, and finding easy to use free stuff out there. I have here iMovie. iMovie is probably the most well-known and most user-friendly interface option that there is. However, the only thing with that is that it is only available for Mac and iOS operating softwares. But there are alternatives such as Shotcut and HitFilm Express that are also available for Mac and Windows. So those are available across platforms, and you can use those to try your hand at editing if you want to learn. These are some of the options that I recommend in terms of being able to use these softwares and start creating content. But if you don't want to dive into that just yet, and you want to try your hand at something a little bit more simpler, Animoto is a really great online tool that can help you create videos within minutes. There are many templates and styles and animations to choose from, so you can just drag and drop your video content there, and it basically does the editing for you. And I really like it because it's, again, pretty simple. You can create fun videos in a matter of minutes. And the really cool thing about them is that they have multiple plans, and one of their plans is free, so you can definitely check them out if you're interested, and if you want to upgrade to some of their features, that's definitely an option for you to do if it's something that you find yourself that you find that is comfortable for you to use. And then the last that I have there under editing software is just like Animoto, but Magisto. It's just another really great online platform for you to edit videos. It's very simple, very straightforward to use. However, the only thing with this is that it does require a paid subscription, but it's at a pretty low price for $4. So if it's something that you want to try out, it's definitely worth checking out if it's something that you're interested in. But yeah, just to keep in mind in terms of the editing software, while these are just a few out there and that for the most part are free, they can also be a bit limiting in terms of the type of editing that you can create in content. So if you do want to take your video edits to the next level, I do recommend using Final Cut Pro or Adobe Premiere. Adobe Premiere and Final Cut are one of those editing softwares that are used across video production professionals. Like those are the type of softwares that you will often find them using. They are pretty great tools. There is a bit of a learning curve, but what I have found is that when I started off with iMovie and I switched over to Final Cut Pro, I found that the learning curve wasn't as bad because iMovie has a pretty good similar interface as Final Cut Pro, so it was just a matter of learning how to navigate Final Cut a little bit differently. Adobe does have more of a learning curve, so you might have to be a little bit more patient when it comes to learning that software, but these two are just probably one of the most that really gives you some really great flexibility and can give your hand some opportunity for creativity. On that list, I also have promo.com, which is, again, very similar to Animoto and Magisto, but this is more of an advanced version of it. So I do recommend checking that out if that's something also that you're interested in. In terms of animation and visual effects, if you want to start incorporating some of that into your work, but don't really have the skill to go out and do some animation or visual effects like me, there are definitely some platforms out there where you can download plugins and templates that you can download and incorporate into Final Cut and Premiere. And this is just motionvfx.com and videohive.net are just some of the examples that some of the places that I've used in terms of capturing some of this animation and visual effects. So if you recall the third example of the video that I shared, the animation from the on-screen text came from one of these platforms. So definitely, it's always really great to check out. You can download, purchase them, and really have some fun in terms of creating content that's visually attractive and engaging. And lastly, what I have here is for licensed music. Music is just one of those things that we often want to incorporate into our videos, but we also have to be careful about in terms of copyrights. So I included premiumbeats.com. They have a very extensive library of music and just a wide selection of different genres and different sounds and different beats. And it's definitely a place you can check out. You can purchase music and utilize that for your videos without too much of a problem. And I'll also included videohive.net because they also have a really big selection of of music and sounds. And so, yeah, it's definitely worth checking out there too. And so, with all of that being said, visual storytelling can be a pretty lengthy and extensive process. But one piece of encouragement that I'd like to leave with you all is by this one quote that I came across. And that is that no matter what you do, your job is to tell the story. As nonprofit communicators, it is our job to put the storylines together and tell the stories that are going to move our organizations forward. That's our job, and visual storytelling can help us do that. And so no matter what method you choose in terms of telling your story, the important thing is that we're getting the story out there and that we're telling it, and that people, we're telling it with the hopes, that people can see it and be moved to action. And so yes, so with that, I leave you. Feel free to stay connected with me on Twitter or on LinkedIn. Thank you again so much for tuning in to watch this webinar. And so we'll have some time for questions. So let's take a look at what's here. All right, so there's a question here that says, are there sources of free music like there are for free stock photos? Yeah, so great question. Yes, there are definitely options where you can get music for free. I know the options that I shared, those do require a bit of an investment in terms of purchasing music, but there are definitely plenty of options out there where you can get music for free. One example that I have in mind is the Free Music Archive. That's a really great place to look. You can check that out, and they have a wide selection to choose from. That's usually you can download and don't really won't have any issues in terms of using their music. Just make sure to look at their copyrights. I'm not sure if some of them have like special permissions, but definitely always make sure to check for that. bensound.com is also a place to look into. They have royalty-free music. You can definitely download that, download music there. And then I know in the past, Brian has mentioned the Creative Commons section of royalty-free music on SoundCloud. So that's definitely a place to also look into. That's where I've gotten some of my music selections from as well in the past. And then I know on YouTube Studio, they have a music library within installed. And so in the past, I've gone on there and have downloaded options again to just make sure to take a look at their attributions. So yeah, let's take the next question. Is there a good phone app to quickly compile video clips for editing? Great question. Yeah. So I have an iPhone, and what I've used, it's been iMovie. So iMovie is free, but like I mentioned, it's only available across iOS and Mac operating systems. So if you don't have an iPhone, you won't be able to use that. But I do recommend checking out different apps just on the App Store, finding one that works best for you and what you feel the most comfortable with, because a lot of them are available. They're pretty simple, but some of them can be a little bit hard to navigate sometimes. So it's just a matter of finding out what your needs are and what works best for you. Okay, so here the next question says, are there any free decent video editing programs? Yeah, so as I shared earlier in my presentation, iMovie, definitely free, one of the best. I might be biased, but I really think it's just one of the best to get started off with. But in terms of for Windows users, there's Shotcut, Hiltfilm Express, and I know Brian has also mentioned Blender and Lightworks are some really great options to look into. You can definitely get those online, download them for free, and try them out and see which one works best for you, which one doesn't, which one works, the one that you feel more comfortable with. The next question here says, do any specific examples come to mind of successful storytelling nonprofits? I would love to check them out and study them. Yeah, so one example that always comes to mind for me is the ASPCA commercial. So I don't know if you're familiar with that organization, but they are the ones that ran the commercials with the animals looking sad attached with the song "In the Arms of an Angel." I just think that's, for me, it comes to mind because those are that video ad really helped push a lot of support for the organization. It had a huge impact. Like, it brought in thousands of dollars into their organization, and it just really hit their target market pretty spot on. So if that's something you want to take a look into in terms of the emotional aspect, definitely check that out. But some other organizations, in terms of how they do visual storytelling, they're not necessarily nonprofits, but some that I always look to for, like, just to see what the trends are out there and in terms of storytelling are Attention, ATTN : and Now This. They have a pretty good extensive presence with video online, and so I always check them out to see what they're doing and see how I can incorporate some of what they're doing into my work. And then I think the last question here says, what are the optional links for video on different platforms? Websites, Facebook, Twitter, etc. Yeah, so this is a really great question, and I'm glad that it was asked, because this is often something a lot of people wonder about. For me, as I mentioned earlier in my presentation, I think a general rule of thumb that I like to follow is that make your video as long as it takes for you to tell your story. So that's just one general rule that I like to go by, because sometimes we want our video to convey the message that we want to convey, and sometimes that takes about 2 minutes, sometimes it takes 5, sometimes it takes 30 seconds. It just really depends on the overall story and the impact that you want it to have. And but in terms of platforms and how the videos that perform well on them, I know that for Facebook, videos that are between 2 to 6 minutes usually perform pretty well. On Instagram, you have videos. They allow you to upload a video up to a minute, and then after that, like, if it goes longer than that, it goes straight to IGTV. But usually videos on Instagram, 20 to 30 seconds are what perform well on there. And then for Twitter, videos under 30 seconds, so 30 seconds or less, are what perform well on Twitter. And then on YouTube, I know YouTube is just one of those platforms that when people log on, they know that they're going on there to watch videos. So people are more prepared to sit and watch longer videos. So yes, videos on YouTube, they're going to be longer. And you're going to want to take that time and think about, where you're going to share your video, where you're going to share, what platform you're going to use, and take that into consideration. But at the same time, like, if it takes you a little bit longer than that to tell your story, don't feel like you have to limit yourself. Make sure that, when you're creating your video content and you want it to be strong, you want it to be powerful, and if it goes a little bit more than 30 seconds, that's okay. Because, it's also about the story and the story that you're telling. So I hope that was helpful. All right. So I don't see any more questions here. So we're going, yeah, I don't see any more questions. So again, I'd like to thank you all for taking the time to just be here today and for tuning in. Thank you so much for being a part of Create Good. And I hope you all just have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you. Bye, everyone.